Okay, Lula, thank you for joining tonight.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here this evening to join Women of Colors. And so I want to start off by having a prayer. So I want to start off by having a prayer. So Father God, in the name of Jesus, we just thank you and praise you on this day. We thank you for this is the day that you have made. Father, we ask that you would come in with us during this forum, oh Father God, that you would bless the participants, the panelists, oh Father God, and the moderator as well, Father, in the name of Jesus Christ. Father, we just thank you and we ask that you would bless our city, oh Father God. Bless our world, oh God, in the name of Jesus Christ, Father. We thank you and we give you glory. We give you honor and we give you praise, Father. And we ask that things that are said this evening, that it will be helpful and beneficial, that you can grow from this, that you would be empowered in the name of Jesus. And we give you glory, honor, and praise in Jesus' name. Amen. In addition, Women of Colors want to take the opportunity to align ourselves in support of the Juneteenth celebration and commemoration, which is taking place across the United States today. January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln signed the executive order to focus to free slaves by signing the Emancipation Proclamation. Well, 155 years ago, in Galveston, Texas, over 250,000 enslaved Black people received the news of freedom, but they received it 2 years later on June 19th, 1865. It's the oldest celebration of the end of slavery in the United States. In 1980, Texas was the first state to declare Juneteenth a state holiday with this distinction of its flag that's displayed. Check it out. And we want to say that as I speak, Congress is pushing to make this day a federal holiday. And so why did this happen? Texas slave owners refused to acknowledge the end of the Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation. This is the reason we needed the 13th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States to shut down slavery. So Black history is a part of the American story. Let's learn about the many contributors who have made America great. And so at this time, I'll pass it over to Ms. Vicki Hill.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Vicki Hill, and I am Vice President of Women of Color. Tonight, we invite all of you to be a part of a segment that we do. It's called I'm Still a Man. Now, if some of you are familiar with this, we've been doing it now for about 2 years, and it's been really, really great. And the whole concept is for I'm Still a Man, there are panelists of men. Now, normally we have about 4 men, but because this is our first time doing it Facebook Live via Zoom Live, we have 2 panelists tonight, and you're going to hear about their struggles, what they went through in life, and how they got through them. You'll hear a lot of inspiring things that they're going to tell us tonight. And I advise you also, just write down a few questions if you'd like to do so. So tonight we have Miguel Gomez, who is the undersheriff. And we also have Andre Taco Reed. We all call him Taco. So we have Taco Reed as well. And he is an ordained minister, a gospel singer, and he also works for CMU Health. All right. So we've got some great speakers tonight, and they're going to tell us about their lives and how they got through their struggles. And of course, our host tonight is the Honorable Judge Terry Clark, and he's from Saginaw 70th District Court. So I introduce you to the Honorable Judge Terry Clark.
Hey, thank you, Vicki. And I would like to also say good afternoon to the Great Lakes Bay region. Also, thank you, Mrs. Woodard, for that wonderful introduction, that inspiring prayer, and for that acknowledgement of Juneteenth today as we celebrate that monumental event that took place in our history and our heritage. Before we begin, Vicki, Ms. Hill has already gone through with you a little overview about I'm Still a Man, the whole purpose of this program. But also Women of Colors, they also do another part to this, which is called How I Overcame. And in that particular program, they highlight women in our community. And I'm Still a Man, they're highlighting men and their struggles. And as Ms. Hill indicated, this is our first time making this entry into the cyber world. And if we make any errors along the way, please charge it to our heads and not to our hearts, because this is our first foray into the cyber world. And I would like to just give you a little background information about Women of Colors. The Women of Colors is a nonprofit organization. It started in '93. It's a diverse group of women sharing different ideas to improve the Saginaw community. Myself and a group of men, Women of Colors, they reached out to some guys in our community, myself included, Corey Pritchett, Sergeant Reimers from the Saginaw County Sheriff's Department. They reached out to us to say, hey, look, we want some guys to give us a little input because we're thinking about starting another component to our program where we bring women in and we want to bring some guys in. So we all stepped up to the plate and we said, hey, look, we're going to help out. And if you've never heard of Women of Colors, and I think everybody in the Great Lakes Bay region, you've heard of Women of Colors because they've done some wonderful things in our community and trying to strengthen diversity. They provide empowerment and quality education sessions, monthly meetings. They do evidence-based training and special events to serve others, mentoring youth. In 2002, if I'm correct, they developed what's called their Great Empowerment Motivational Session, their GEMS, their youth mentoring program, which consists of Girl Pride, Sugar and Spice, Young Men Who Dare, GEMS Parent Committee, and Students and Future Technology. GEMS encourages community service with their young people. They have a scholarship fund that they offer. And in 2014, Women of Colors was able to secure a classroom and office space at SVRC, Learn to Earn Academy. And in 2017, they developed the Women of Colors Youth Prevention Program, in which 4 members were trained to become certified recovery coaches. So that's a little overview about Women of Colors in our community. It's a dynamic organization. And at the end, the president of Women of Colors, Mrs. Evelyn McGowan, she's going to come before you. She's going to introduce some of the members who are out there in cyber world listening in with us. Ms. Hill has already talked about the purpose of I'm Still a Man. And I believe, and I feel, and I'm sure all of you out in cyber world, this is a very important topic considering the cultural crossroads that we are in our country. And the purpose of this whole program is for guys to come before you and stand in their truth and talk about some of the struggles that they've had to encounter in their lives. And in this way, someone out there, will understand that they're not by themselves in their struggles. And that they can overcome, and that they're still a man despite the things that they're going through. And, in the immortal words of Tupac, you remember when Tupac said in one of his songs, if you don't know me, don't judge me. That's what it's all about. And you have 2 dynamic speakers this afternoon. I'm really geeked up to hear these guys. One I've known for a long time, Under Chef Miguel Gomez. He comes from a very political family in our community. I remember my first campaign in '92. His mother, his father, his younger brother, and his younger sister were at my church at New Mount Calvary in the Fellowship Hall, stuffing envelopes for me back in '92. So it's a family that's deep rooted in politics in our community. His mother, wonderful lady. I mean, his mother, I can't say anything but good things about his mom. Just a heart of gold. She made her transition several years ago, but did she leave her impact on her children? And one of those children is our first speaker up tonight, Under Sheriff Miguel A. Gomez, known as Mike. We all call him Mike, but his legal name is Miguel. And Miguel has been with the Saginaw County Sheriff's Department for over 26 years. He's been married to Raquel Gomez for 24 years. They have 4 children. And Miguel has 2 associate degrees from Delta College. He graduated from the Police Academy at Delta, and he currently sits on the Board of Trustees for Health Sources of Saginaw and the Great Lakes Bay Hispanic Leadership Institute. He's a lifelong Saginaw County resident, and in his spare time, he enjoys time with his family. That's something he learned from his parents, that those ties to his children, committed, the wonderful family man that he is. And Mike's, one of his major distinctions in our community, and he's going to correct me if I'm wrong, he's the first person of color to serve as second in command in the highest law enforcement department in Saginaw County outside of the Michigan State Police. I'm going to separate them, but local law enforcement in Saginaw County, he is the highest ranking person of color in that role as undersheriff. And I believe Miguel is the first person of color to serve as undersheriff in Saginaw County's history. And without that, Miguel, we're going to turn it over to you. You're going to bring us I'm Still a Man.
Thank you so much, Your Honor, for that introduction. I'm honored to be here. Evelyn, when you asked me if I would be willing to come and speak to the group, I didn't know what to say. You know, I knew I was going to say yes, but that distinction, I've said it already, but I'm just honored. You know, I'm a very lucky person, right? Oh, and before I get too far into it, you know, I'm an animate person, you know, I'm a passionate person, and I kind of talk and move my hands and things like that. So I hope it's not too distracting. Okay. But getting back, you know, I'm a very lucky person because I do for a living what I absolutely love to do. You know, since I was 4 years old, I've always known I wanted to be a police officer. And that doesn't sit well sometimes with the Hispanic community. You know, I have cousins and I have friends whose parents were dead set against anyone being a law enforcement person and discouraged it. And I was lucky that my father and my mother didn't do that. They let me choose my path, and it was different because even at 4 or 5 years old, when I knew I wanted to be a police officer, I had to take a roundabout way to get there because of that. You know, I grew up at 1116 Emily, and I went to Emerson Elementary School, and that school's closed down. And so my father worked 3rd shift at the Malibu Iron, that's gone. And after a while, once he would go to work, I would go off and do whatever, you know. And so, you know, of course, schoolyard fights would happen and things like that. And I started hanging around more with my cousins, and I could walk all over, right? I walked all over this city. My grandmother lived on Williamson, and so I would walk from her house to the park, and that's where I played baseball at Hoyt Park. You know, I would walk to the neighborhood house. I would walk all over, and I was with my cousins, and my dad kept telling me, you know, that he thought that I was going to become wild. I was going to get myself into trouble. And he was never worried about the fighting at school. He said, you know, that's going to happen. But when he was growing up, he was a migrant worker, and his family, he came from a group of 12, and his uncles had children. And so all of his cousins, he said, they would swell a town to twice the population when they went places following the crops. And when they all rode into town, they weren't worried or afraid of anything because they were always together. And so when he saw that I was starting to get like that, he decided we had to move. We had to leave Saginaw because he was worried that that comfort was going to turn eventually bad. And so he moved me, he moved our family out into the county. And so I was stuck there. I was stuck there until I could drive. Right? Because I remember that first day I walked down our driveway and it's like 365 feet long. So I walked down to the end of the driveway. I looked both ways. I couldn't see the corners. So walked back, got on my bike, went out the driveway, went to the end of the road, looked both ways. I couldn't see the corners. So I was stuck. I went back home and I just stayed there till I was 16. But even before that, when my sister got her first boyfriend and she was driving at 16, you know, there's a traditional Mexican rule that young ladies couldn't go out by themselves. So I was the chaperone. Everywhere she wanted to go, she had to take me with her. Her boyfriend and his brother, I didn't get along with. So there was going to be two choices there. Either she wasn't going to go or I was going to end up fighting with them. So what happened? At 14 years old, she gave me the keys of the car and I just drove around Saginaw then, doing whatever I wanted to do. As long as I picked her up by 11:45 and we made it back home by midnight, everything was okay. And my father is a traditional Mexican father, right? And there was no middle ground. It was his rules, his way. And so we obeyed those rules. But in the meantime, because doing the right thing is always harder than doing not the right thing, because not the right thing is normally fun. So I would stay within the rules, but still did what I wanted to do. And while I'm doing these things, I still wanted to be a police officer, but I started to really, really dislike Saginaw City Police Department because of the way they would treat us. They would make contact with us for no reason. And where are you going? Where are you coming from? What are you doing in this neighborhood? You know, back then, Anderson Pool was open and we could walk from Anderson Pool to my grandmother's house. And our route was the same. And we would always come into contact with people. We would come into contact with police. And the same type of officer I thought when I was sitting on the porches at 1116 Emily and looked so professional and carried themselves a certain way. And I wanted to be like, were starting to treat me like differently. Right. And that bothered me. So I turned 16. I have my driver's license now. Now I'm back in the city and I'm hanging around with my cousins till 3, 4 in the morning because my dad doesn't get home till 6. And as long as I'm home before he gets home, I'm fine. Then I started to venture out into Saginaw Township because now I'm mobile. And I really hated Saginaw Township Police Department, even though I wanted to be a police officer. Because I would get stopped at the border of Saginaw City and Saginaw Township and was told numerous times I had no business in Saginaw Township. Did I even have money to be in Saginaw Township? Being accused of going to commit a crime. More times than I can count, I was taken out of my car, my hands placed on the hood or trunk of my car and patted down. And I to this day, I drive around in a marked unit, a marked police car. And if Saginaw Township police car is behind me, I feel like I should pull to the right, get out and put my hands on the car. You know, and even talking to you right now about it makes me angry. It just, I don't know why. This is the one thing that I don't know if I inherited from my mother. And that's the ability to forgive. My mom was a very religious person and spiritual and had faith, more faith than I could ever imagine. And she could forgive people. She would always tell me, I'm not going to forget but you have to forgive people. And sometimes I have trouble with that. So at graduation time, I graduate from high school, and now I don't have to be home by a certain time because I don't have to get up to go to school the next day. And I'm expected, it's just expected, I'm going to go to college. So I go sign up and register at Saginaw Valley State University, but I quit. I didn't really go. I just was hanging out with my cousins in the street and doing whatever we wanted to do. You know, a couple of times my mom even tracked me down over there and said, "Hey, are you going to go to class? You know, we're paying for this. Why aren't you going? You know, what are you going to do with yourself?" And the turning point in my life came, I flunked out, right? I got a letter sent to me from the dean of Saginaw Valley State University and basically telling me, "Thank you, but there's no need for you to return." And so I wasn't going to go. I was content working at a gas station and just hanging out. But then my cousins that I was hanging around with started to go to prison, go to jail, go to prison. And I went and visited one. And he's like 2 weeks, 3 weeks older than me. He was born in February. I'm born in March. But he acts like he's years and years older than me. And when I went to visit him, he told me that this cage is not for me. He said, "This cage is not for you. You always want to be a cop. Go be a cop. Just go do something. Just don't end up like me." And so I did. You know, I went and I told my dad, I'm like, "Hey, Dad, you're right. I got to do something with my life. I want to be a police officer. I'm going to go to college." And my dad said, "You know what? That's great, son. I'm proud of you. I really am. How are you going to pay for it?" And in no uncertain terms, he told me what I did with the money for Saginaw Valley State University, what I did with that money in no uncertain terms. And so I had to come up with a plan. And how was I going to get myself through school? So I started taking out 90-day notes. And I would only take a few classes at a time at Delta College, all criminal justice classes. And so I would pay by the end of the semester, I would be paid off. That way the next semester I could get another loan and pay those. And that's how I made it. That's how I ended up going and getting through Delta College. And then in 93, I applied at the sheriff's office to work in the jail. And I got hired as a, they called us turnkeys back then. They didn't call us corrections officers, they called us turnkeys. We carried around a big clock hanging on our side. And at the end of the cell blocks, there was big skeleton keys that we turned into the clock and twisted it, and it time stamped when we were places. But my first day there was about 15 people I knew in jail. I had a couple relatives in there, and then some people that I guess were friends, right, in jail. And they were like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm working here." Like, "You're working here? How are you working here?" And I'm like, "Well, you know, just, that's the old Mike. This is the new Mike. By the way, call me Mike." And it was I was treated different than most people that just started out, because you know, a lot of people get the new people get a hard time by the inmates. I wasn't like that, because everybody in there knew who I was, and I had never been in a gang, and I've never I no markings, no anything, but affiliated, absolutely, because all of my cousins had started one of the worst gangs in Saginaw. So everybody knew if you messed with me while as a guard, that something bad was going to happen to them. So I kind of used that to my advantage, but it you know, and it taught me how to talk to people and treat people. And I would start to remember how I was treated by Saginaw Township Police Department and Saginaw City Police Department, and so I just treated people with respect. And even when I didn't get it, I still treated people with respect. After a couple of years there, I asked the sheriff at the time, Tom McIntyre, to grant me a leave of absence so that I could put myself through the police academy. So I took out a loan and I paid my tuition, and I got a couple extra dollars out so that I had money in my pocket, because I wasn't allowed to work the same amount of hours as I was working before. And I paid my way through the police academy. I got done. I graduated. I became a certified police officer, and then I went back to work in the jail and waited my turn to be promoted to a deputy. And then I got the opportunity. And I was in the FTO program. And then I messed that up. And it's really hard for people to look in the mirror and find fault in themselves. And when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about, and I just said, and I was, tell me about you is what Evelyn said. Tell us about you. I debated, do I talk about this part? Because this is hard to talk about. But I messed it up, right? I messed it up because even when you're on this side, there are people that will want to take advantage, right? And then I started hanging around people even that we didn't do anything wrong, but we did some questionable things, right? We would go out and we would drink together, as friends, socializing and all that kind of stuff. And we made a bad decision, drank too much, police were called, and we left. Instead of staying there and giving our side of the story, we left. And when Tom McIntyre found out about it, he called me in the office. He asked me some questions. I told him the truth. And he said, I appreciate you being honest with me, but I don't think you're deputy material. And he put me back inside the jail. And that was really hard for me. I had to go and tell my dad that I messed up. And Sheriff McIntyre was right to do what he did. Absolutely right to do what he did. And I'm grateful. Now that I think back about it, once I made it back out and I knew I was gonna commit myself to this, I was grateful. And my dad told me, he's like, I know McIntyre pretty good. He's like, I can make some phone calls. We could probably get you back on the road. He's like, I know a couple judges, they'll write a letter for you and things like that. And I'm like, no, Dad, you raised me to be a man, and I will do what I have to do as a man to get to where I want to be. And, he was angry with me, but he hugged me and told me that he'll let me make my decision. And I had to tell my wife, and it was really difficult. It was really difficult to tell her that, that I messed up and I'm going back into the jail and so I came out about a year and a half later. Mr. Sheriff McIntyre, he put me back on the road right before he left office. And I truly thank him for that, for taking that chance on me again. And I knew I wasn't going to let him down, but I also knew that the person that took over for him was never going to give me that opportunity. I knew it, and I believe Sheriff McIntyre knew it, and that's why he did it. And he gave me that opportunity. And so from that point on, I tried to be the best officer I could be. And I tried to represent my sheriff's department, my community, my family, myself the best that I can. And there have been, obstacles in the way. I believe I should have been promoted before I was to sergeant, to detective, and I was passed over a few times. And I did not let that change my attitude towards the being a police officer. A lot of people call it a job, and it's not a job, it's a calling. I really believe, I truly believe that. I've sat in the judge's courtroom, Judge Clark's courtroom, and he is so clear with people when he talks to them. There's no, there's not questions once he taught how the way he's able to explain it. And sitting in his courtroom and others, I've always told myself, I got to be able to convey my thoughts that way so that people, number one, don't have questions, but if they do, they feel comfortable enough to ask. And so that's how I've tried to conduct myself. You know, I was a detective for a while, and I really loved doing that. But I kept seeing things and saying to myself, if I ever have the chance to change this or that, I'm going to change it. And the only way to change it is to have the authority to change it. And so every 2 years, I would take the sergeant's exam and I would be on the list and I was waiting for promotion. And then a guy named Bill Fetterspiel beats the incumbent sheriff. And there's my opportunity. And I didn't know it at the time, you know, but Sheriff Fetterspiel saw something in me. And he promoted me to sergeant. And then I had a shift that I was supervising. And there was one of the things I could change. I did my best to show them how I do the job and how I expected them to do the job. And I believed my shift followed my lead. They did the job the way I expected them to, the way I would do it. And when the very first thing I had them do is, you know, when somebody is not happy with you, because you're going to see it in their face. You're going to hear it in their voice. Call me and tell me. Let me know. Because if I get it from them first, then it's automatically going to seem like I'm accusing you of doing something wrong when I talk to you about it. That made a lot of complaints go away because they didn't want to have to call me. And they treated people the way they should be treated. And I would go around and I would, you know, when they made a traffic stop, I'd pull up there and I'd walk up to them and I'd just listen to the conversation. You know, and I believe that's the way you supervise. I believe that that's the way the community will have confidence in us, you know. And so I did that for a while, and I was really loving that part of the job. I was training people how to do the job, and then I was supervising people, and you know, I didn't think it could get better for me than that. I really didn't. And then an opportunity came, and again, Sheriff Fetterspiel saw something in me, and he promoted me to lieutenant. And then I was supervising the entire law enforcement side of the sheriff's office. And I told myself, here's another opportunity to change more things that I would change if I had the chance. And I took that opportunity. I took that chance, and we were, you know, we used to wear those I used to call, me and the sheriff call them pajamas, right? They were khaki pants and a polo shirt, and they had that big vest over top with all the equipment hanging all over. And I always wore my regular uniform. I always wore my Class A uniform. But when I became the law enforcement lieutenant, I told the sheriff, I'm like, I want to go back to the Class A uniform. It looks better. It looks more professional. When people call the police, they expect us to show up looking a certain way. They don't expect us showing up to look like we're there to fight with people. And the sheriff's like, he says, I'm fine with it. If that's what you want to do, I'm fine with it. So we all went back to our Class A uniforms, our shirt and our ties. I had a lot of people not happy with that decision. A lot of people. And some of them thought that I was doing that to punish them, or I simply did it because I didn't like the other uniform, and I didn't like the other uniform. You know, I would see it. Some of my guys came to work looking like they picked them up off the floor and just threw it on and came to work, you know. But I really believe that if you dress like a professional, you will carry yourself like a professional, you will act like a professional, and you will treat people professionally. And so, you know, we went back to that, and some other things. I started making them polish their shoes, you know, little things that started to build up, right? And then I convinced them to change to a black uniform. And you know, that met with a lot of resistance. You know, I grew up in that brown uniform, but it had, the usefulness had worn out. It was not cost friendly. It was really hard to get some things, and then the colors didn't match, right? There was different shades of brown that we were getting, and you'd have 5 officers standing there and they'd all have a different color pair of pants on, you know? And so when we went to black, the sheriff at first wasn't real sure about it. And the very first time we put it on, we went to speak at Leadership Saginaw. We hosted the law day they do, or the courthouse visit that they do, or whatever it is. And they came to our place, and we went down and spoke to them. And the sheriff's like, "So what do you think about this new uniform? We're thinking about going to it." And we were met with positive responses. And so the sheriff's like, "Yeah, I'm thinking they're digging this. So put the whole department in it." I'm like, "Okay." So we did it. And you know, but I kept having to explain my decisions, because I could hear people in the background. You know, thinking that they're saying that, you know, I should never have been promoted. Or one guy actually said more than one time that I was just a gangbanger that never got caught. And how can I be a lieutenant in the sheriff's office? And I would say, well, you know, if that's the case, you're a terrible cop if you never caught me, because I wasn't hiding, you know? So when the opportunity came that the position for undersheriff came open, I had no idea what was going to happen. I knew, because I've always had confidence in myself, that I was going to let the sheriff know that I was interested in the position. But did I really think that I was going to get promoted to be the undersheriff of Saginaw County? Not really, because the 2 undersheriffs before me always came from outside the agency. And the undersheriffs I've had my whole career were from outside the agency. And so when Sheriff Federspiel again saw something in me and he asked me if I would take the position, I was kind of surprised. You know, I told him, of course, I'd take it, you know, but I want the other lieutenants to know. I don't want this to be a memo. You know, let's talk them all together. That way they can voice their opinion. Because, you know, just forcing people to accept things sometimes doesn't work out that way. And so we brought them all in, and I can't lie. I was more than surprised when they shook my hand and told me that I was the right pick. And you know, I got great staff here. You know, my sheriff lets me, you know, do my job. We talk about the decisions and the things what's best for Saginaw County, and it's worked out. And sometimes I look in the mirror in the morning as I shave every day, and I tell myself, how did you become the undersheriff? A guy that flunked out of college, right? I flunked out of college, and then I have my dream job and I messed that up. And then by the grace of God, I get a second chance. And then this guy comes along and he promotes me 3 times. You know, 3 times. And I've told him before, I'm like, thank you. And I don't know what you saw in me that made you take a chance in me. You know, I hope it's the fact that that he saw that I'm competent. I have confidence in myself. And then I hope he sees that I love my community. I love my county. I love my city. I love my department. And I love my people that work here. You know, and you know, I'm just so grateful. And I everybody I come into contact with out in the community, you know, I've been hurt here. You know, I've been hurt here and different struggles trying to arrest people and things like that. But I have never really felt, you know, animosity. You know, I was at the Chase Bank a few weeks ago, and a person that I have known off and on for 24 years because I met him my first day, he was in jail, and he's standing there waiting in line at the ATM at the Chase Bank around the corner. And I look up and I say, "How you doing, Mike?" And he looks at me. He's like, "How you doing, Mike?" And I'm like, "I'm good." And he's like, "You on the road now?" I said, "You won't believe this, but I'm the undersheriff. I'm like the second highest guy in the whole department." And he's like, "For real?" I said, "For real." And he's like, "That's awesome." He's like, "When you were a turnkey, we didn't know what you were going to do from one day to the next." He said, "But you went to the road and you stayed Mike. You know, you took me to jail even then." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." He said, "You stayed Mike. You stayed Mike the whole way. Stay Mike." I'm like, I don't know how to be anything else. The only thing I know how to be is Victor Gomez's son and Mike Gomez. That's all I know. And that's who does this job. I look at everything through the eyes that I was raised with. And I'm grateful. And I thank you for letting me share my story. You know, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Well, Mike, it was a wonderful story from somebody like yourself who talked about falling down, but still able to get back up. And 3 promotions later, despite your struggles, look at you now, the highest ranking law enforcement person of color in our county. That's real impressive. Mike, there are a couple of questions I want to throw out to you before we get to our next speaker. And I want you to touch upon a couple of these themes for us tonight, if you can. One, someone raised the question, why do you think then Sheriff McIntyre did not promote you? And the second question, Mike, I would like to throw out to you is this. You talked about your fear of the police when you left the city of Saginaw going into Saginaw Township. What do you say to our audience tonight with what's going on in our country about the fear, about fearing police, that interaction of people? With so much going on, how do you overcome that fear? What could you say to the young people and anybody in general who's listening out in Saginaw Bay, the Great Lakes Bay region this evening? Talk to me.
Well, first, Sheriff McIntyre did promote me. He took me and promoted me from a corrections officer or a turnkey to a deputy. There was a sheriff between Sheriff McIntyre and Sheriff Fetterspiel. That's the gentleman that did not promote me.
Okay.
And I have a feeling, I have my own feeling of why. And I'm not going to put words in his mouth, right? And there's no need to turn over that rock again. You know, I believe I have a strong personality, and he wasn't used to that. And I was a board member on the deputies union, and there was nothing ever personal about me representing the other deputies, but he wanted to fire a man for a reason that was not right, in my opinion. When he had valid reasons to fire that person. But if he had fired that person, he would have had to fire the accomplice, and he did not want to fire the accomplice. So he didn't fire. He didn't fire. I'll be frank. He wanted to fire a black man, but he would have to have fired the white female accomplice, and he did not want to do that. Okay, so another incident happened with that deputy, with the man, and so he tried to fire him for that. I'm like, you can't. And he told me, he's like, you know, he doesn't need to be here. You know, he's a bad deputy. You know, he's this, you know, he's that. And I said, you're absolutely right. But you should have fired him for the other things. Because if I stand here and let you fire him for this, you could turn around tomorrow and fire me for it. So we have to, we have to grieve this as a union. We have to fight against that. You know, you don't fire a guy for calling in sick and then not being at home, because there was nothing that said you had to come to work if you felt better. Right? So he calls in sick at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then at noon he's somewhere else and he's seen somewhere else. You can't fire him for that. He felt better. If he doesn't come to work tomorrow and he calls in sick, then you maybe got an issue. But that day, there's nothing that compels him to come to work when he feels better. So that he took personally, and for those reasons, I was just going to have a long road to hoe. And the 10 years he was the sheriff, I had a long road to hoe.
All right. Well, you answered the question because we're talking about a sheriff between McIntyre and Feathersfield. Next question: how do you address the fear issue that people may have of the police in this day and age?
Well, first, I want to, you know, a few years ago, like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I actually posted something on Facebook because there was certain things going around the country back then, right? And I posted something on Facebook and basically saying thank you to the county residents, because we didn't really have the issues that other police departments are having, right? The fear that I still have, and you know, and that's the exact correct word to use when I see a certain police car behind me. That's the exact word to use because of what happened. And it's incumbent on the people that run departments to know what their people are doing. And there's no way around that, you know, and then they need to be addressed. You know, here in the sheriff's office, every complaint that comes in gets investigated. Anybody that calls here, I get most of those calls. And I do some of the investigations. I question the deputies. Some I give to our internal affairs lieutenant, but some get to me that I need to know the answer now. I need to know what happened now, right? And so I call those deputies and I talk to them. And it doesn't mean it stops there. That just means, like, tell me this is going to go up the chain. You're going to end up having to answer some questions from the internal affairs lieutenant, you know, and then whatever comes out in the wash will come out in the wash. And if you do it, and they know if they need to be punished, they will be punished. If they need to face sanctions, they're going to face them. That's just the way it is. Other departments have to understand. I think they forget the words that used to be painted on all the cars. And it wasn't protect and serve. It was serve and protect. You know, the serve part was first. And when I had my mentor was a sergeant by the name of London Cox, right? He taught me some things, right? He taught me a lot of things. And he's the one that said that to me. He's the one that told me, Mike, it's serve and protect. Too many of us want to protect, which automatically puts you on the attack. You know, there's all this kind of diversity training and things like that, you know, and we've all been through it, right? And now they're saying we need more of it and things like that. You know what we need? We need listening training. That's what we need. Officers need to listen. Officers need to understand we are going to win. When it all comes out in the wash, if somebody's going to go to jail, they're going to go. It's just the way it is. But we need to listen and understand that how stupid of us for us to feel that when we arrest somebody, they should be happy about it. When we take their freedom, they should be happy about it. Of course, they're not going to be happy about it. You know, and I learned this from my mom, right? I learned this from my mom because I pulled my mom over one time, right? And I pulled her over because I was hungry and I wanted to know what she was making for dinner. And she had my nephew with her, and he's like 5 years old at the time. So I pull her over, I walk up, and I say, "Hey, Mom, what's for dinner?" And then she looks at me and she's like, "What are you doing? Right? Why are you doing this to me?" Like, you know, we didn't have cell phones at the time. I'm like, how else am I supposed to know what's for dinner? You got something at the house, or I got to go find somewhere else, you know? And so you skip forward like, I don't know, 3-4 months, and we're at a family barbecue and everybody's joking around and stuff like that. And there was some incident in the paper and about police, and my mom says that, you know, she loves the police. And I'm like, Mom, you don't love the police. You love me because I'm your son. I said, and you're respectful and you believe that the police are needed, but do you really love the police? And she's like, yes, I do. I'm like, you remember that day that I pulled you over, Mom? So remember when the lights came on? Did you say, oh, look, it's the police, I'm getting pulled over? Or did you say, crap, it's a cop? And my nephew said, it was the second thing, Uncle. It was the second thing. I said, see, Mom? She goes, but you have to listen to people. Right? Wait, she said, you have to listen. And if you listen, I didn't like being pulled over. I didn't like it. But when we were talking, I could see why you're a good cop, because you got people to their you know, it's a traumatic event when you get pulled over. And for some of us, it's more traumatic than others, right? And she's like, you're able to get people to calm down, right? You get them to relax. She said, I think that's why you make a good cop. And so that's always stuck with me. And that's what we need. We need police officers to listen, right? I'm not a big person. I'm 5'6" on a tall day, right? But I've taken to jail some very, very big people because I'm like, I know you're not going to like this. I talk to them. I listen to them. I'll let you make that phone call. I'll let you use my phone to call your family and tell them you need bond money. Right? I won't put your car in impound. We can call somebody and they can come and get the car and we'll wait. But we have to listen to people more than anything.
You know, Mike, I think that listening aspect, we're going to go to our next speaker, but I think what you're talking about, that listening and that empathy, and I think that's something that's a strand. I think when people saw what happened in Minneapolis, they saw a police officer who did not appear to have any empathy. And I think that concerned people. I mean, just the look, the demeanor. And you're talking about that you have empathy. You listen because of your background and your upbringing. I mean, your family members who were in gangs, knowing people who were in that jail. It's a difference. It's a difference. And we're going to come back to you. If we have some more time, Mike, we got a whole lot of questions. And you know, we got a whole lot for you being in law enforcement. We're gonna moving on to our next speaker. Our next speaker, Andre Taco Reed. Andre Taco Reed was born in Ypsilanti, Michigan, raised here in Saginaw, Michigan. Married for 20 years. His wife's name is Lisa. He's the father of one child, Lauren, who just got accepted, heading off to college. She's a senior this year. Congratulations to Taco and his wife. Taco graduated from Saginaw Valley State University with a master's in science and health administration and leadership. He currently works for Central Michigan University Health as a quality improvement coordinator. Andre is a professional gospel singer and a licensed and ordained minister at the New Christ Community Church, a church that was formerly known as Christ Community, that was pastored by his grandfather, Reverend Aldridge, whom we all knew in this community. Andre Taco Reed, pick it up for us. Stand in your truth. Stand in your truth, my brother.
All right, thanks, Judge. I appreciate it. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good? Okay. It's an honor and privilege to be before you today. And I thank the women of color for asking me to speak about my struggle and the things that basically make me me. So I appreciate that, women of color, and God bless you all. I want to honor my wife, Lisa, my daughter, Lauren, and my family and friends. I definitely wouldn't be anything without them, and giving God honor to God who's the head of my life, who's basically given me all that I have, and I truly appreciate that. I just want to say my struggle was a lot different than Undersheriff Gomez, and mine was more so of a spiritual aspect of me being a church boy, raised in a church family. I had different experiences in that. So that's the aspect I'm going with. And I just want to basically start off with saying that no weapon formed against me prospered. There was many weapons formed against me, but none of them prospered. I've been under attack since adolescence. My dad, a minister, was praying over us as kids. And one day when he was praying over me, he said the devil told him that he was going to kill me. And not knowing that, and he prayed against it. But a short while later, that's when I was diagnosed with cancer. And I had a rare form of cancer, nasopharyngeal carcinoma. It's a cancer that more so Pacific Islanders get, and some other type of diagnoses and symptoms that I never experienced, but I had the disease. And so God bless, when I went through that ordeal, I went through it 2 separate times. God healed me once, and then they found tumors on both my lungs. And then when they went in to operate to do a biopsy of the tumors, they all disappeared. They said it ranged from 24 to 42 on both my lungs, and the tumors disappeared miraculously. And so again, no weapon formed against me prospered. As a kid, I knew that whatever I set my mind to, that I could do it, because I knew as a kid to walk by faith, regardless of the things that we encountered in the neighborhood. I'm from the South Side, Saginaw, and it was pretty rough. We weren't kids that got beat up on, but we tried to fit in from the standpoint of, it wasn't a lot of fathers on the South Side. And so we tried to fit in with being a little thuggish, wanting to sell dope, because that's what a lot of our homeboys did. So that longing just to fit in and do what everybody else did was what me and my brothers and cousins wanted to do, because we knew we were some fly guys, and I say that humbly, but we knew we were some fly guys, and we wanted to take the flyness to a whole other level. And we thought that with the stamp of a dope boy on us, it would make us even flyer. But, we ultimately knew that God had greater for us. And I thank God for us not following that path, because we knew our destiny. Ultimately, I knew where I was going to be. I knew that I was determined and destined to be in the church. I knew God had a plan for me, even as a young boy. So it was certain things that I knew I couldn't do because I knew if I did it, it was going to be hard as heck to come back from it. So I set limits and standards. And whether it was good or bad, I did some dumb stuff, but I knew how far to go. And I thank God for putting people in places. There's many times that I set my mind on doing some mischievous things. And when we went out to do them, I would see a friend of my grandma. I would see a family friend of my mom's, or one of my older cousins, or somebody who would snitch on me if they saw me doing something. Or I might even gotten a whooping out in public if I would have got caught doing it. So those people in public, they helped to mold me, whether they knew it or not, into who I am today, because they detoured my foolishness and got me to recognize that I had a greater purpose. And my purpose wasn't to do foolish things. My purpose was to really help people do greater. And so, you know, I knew and know that the greater one lives in me. So me doing greater, I don't have an option but to do greater things, because greater is he that lives in me. And so I refuse to allow the reminiscence of my flaws and my shortcomings to determine my future. I use that, I remember my past victories. And even though cancer might have been one of the toughest things, if not the toughest thing I've ever been through, I use that, and I'm happy that I actually experienced that, because experiencing cancer, it gave me the ability to know that I can make it beyond whatever I encounter. My worst fear of death, I overcame it. And then even with having a coronavirus a few months ago, overcame that. So me going through cancer helped me to get over the coronavirus. Why? Because I remember my past victory. I was motivated and determined the cancer couldn't take me out. The coronavirus wasn't going to take me out either. So I refuse to allow my struggle to keep greatness from coming to pass. And I know that through Christ that all things are possible. And with me understanding that possibility through Christ, see, through Taco, things are limited. But through Christ, I can do anything. And just that faith walk and motivation from childhood, you know, I think the same way I did as a child, but I just don't do all the foolish things. But that same ambition, that same drive is still in me. And I even told my coworkers, you know, a lot of people, they feel of their ethnicities that African Americans are aggressive. But I told them I am aggressive, but I'm respectful. But I'm going to get whatever I set my mind out to accomplish. I'm going to do it respectfully. I'm going to do it legally. But you better believe that I'm going to accomplish whatever I set my mind to. And so I've embedded that in my daughter's mindset. My wife has the same drive to finish everything and anything we accomplish beyond any deterrents, beyond any obstacles. I know that it's not necessarily in my ability to get it done, that it's in God's ability to make it happen. And so, you know, I've been walking by faith as a child and not deterred and not moving by sight. I can't go by how things look, because I should have been dead a long time ago. Probably shouldn't have made it out the neighborhood. Probably shouldn't have made it on the highway in different accidents and things like that. But my mind won't let me stay there. My mind propels me and propels me to the future, because I know that God has greater for me. And I really believe that everything that I touch is going to prosper. So for anybody out there that's going through anything that's mental, whether it's mentally, mental health, whether it's spiritual, whether you have a sickness or ailments, stop looking at yourself and look at God, because he is the author and finisher of our faith. And he's the one that can give you the strength to move beyond your inabilities into the place to where you're able to do all things. So that's who I am, and that's who I choose to be, an overcomer. So that's pretty much it, Judge.
Taco, tell me, several questions here. Taco, one of the questions, I don't think you indicated how old you were when you were diagnosed with this rare form of cancer. How old?
I was 12 years old.
12 years old. At 12,
Yeah.
one of the questions that came in, at that young age, did you ever ask the question, God, why me?
You know what? I asked that question as in my later years. So in my 20s and 30s, you know, I got the call right after I finished my last treatment. The Cancer Society called me as a kid and asked me, would I come back and speak and encourage other youth that were at U of M going through the same thing that I went through? And I told them no. I said, I don't want to see nobody in cancer. I don't want to see cancer again. I don't want to see no more sickness or anything. But I didn't realize the magnitude of the testimony. And so as I got older, me and Jock were in Boise, Idaho. We were on a concert with Jay Moss. And that was the first time I remember giving my testimony. And some women came up to me while we were selling our CDs, and they were crying, saying, thank you for sharing your testimony, because I needed that encouragement. I'm going through cancer and some other things. And my testimony helped them to overcome and stop looking at themselves and really live for tomorrow. Because fighting cancer and fighting diseases like that, you really can't go and get caught up in your now. When I had the coronavirus, family would call and check, and they would say, you know, Taco, how you doing? And I would be feeling great. I was eating, I was praising God, listening to music. And then 5 minutes later, after they hung up, the fever hit, body pain, aches. I was incapacitated, shaking and quivering, couldn't do anything. And I had to remind myself that I could make it. People were texting me and encouraging me. My godfather always told me, didn't you say you're not gonna die but live and declare the works of the Lord? And so my purpose, I believe, ultimately that I realized was to really encourage others, get other people to see beyond their four walls and understand that it's bigger than them. You had it because you have a higher purpose, and to share your testimony and let others see that they can make it when they encounter the same things you've encountered. So yeah, I didn't understand that until later.
Now, Taco, at what point in your life did you decide to become a gospel artist, and how did that come into play in your life?
Really, Judge, I was playing the fence, to be honest with you, because I ultimately knew where I was going to end, but I was trying to play the fence as long as I could.
What do you mean?
Honestly,
stop you. What do you mean?
Play the fence. Play the fence. So I was trying to be in the church and in the streets at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So you know, you get them people that's clubbing, singing in the clubs on Saturday, and then they sing it in church on Sunday. That was me. But one thing that stopped me, well, it was two things that stopped me. For one, I knew that my dad wouldn't come out and see me sing. I knew that my daddy wasn't gonna come out in the clubs and see me and my brother Jock do our thing, because that's not necessarily what our purpose was for. And that would really hurt my heart if my father wouldn't be able to come and do that. And so that was one reason why that deterred us from going that route, because we went that route, but then we came back to the church. And then the other reason was my grandfather made us deacons at the church at the time. And he kept saying he was going to do it, and he hadn't done it. And so he was so preoccupied with being a pastor and living life and doing whatever he had to do for the church, that he told us he was going to make me and all my cousins and brothers deacons, that he hadn't done it. And then when he did it, we had to stop, because I didn't want to be that person that you would see. Now, singing in the choir and singing at the clubs was different. But when you're making us deacons, I knew that people would say we was fake and we were phony if they saw us doing that. And so that was one of the main reasons as well that made me really surrender that life to the world and give my life to Christ.
At what point did you, and I don't know that process, one, receive that call? You are an ordained minister. When did that call happen for you? And did you try to fight it?
Yeah, I knew it as a kid because I was around it. I can hear God speaking to me. I was praying always in high school. I it's a guy now that's got killed a couple years ago in a shootout with the police. And back in high school, he used to try to bully me, but I wasn't intimidated. But he used to try to bully me because of a girl. And so at that time, I would hear God tell me to go certain ways. Didn't know why I was going certain ways, but ultimately I realized it was to avoid the confrontation. And so, I would just pray, God, protect me. I put my angels charge over me, guide my walk, my talk. But I'm doing this in high school, still doing foolish things, but I never forgot where I came from. And it was one day that something big was getting ready to happen that I didn't realize. And I prevented it from praying prior to me going. So I knew as a child or as a teenager at least that it was something bigger in store for me. And then I accepted that calling some years later, maybe in my early 20s. I accepted the calling and I just walked in it ever since, trying to get better and better and understand that I'm flawed, but I'm flawed in the natural, but I'm perfected in the spirit. So I really don't focus on my flaws or anybody else's. I just really focus on what God is doing for me, and I focus on God, how God is blessing me to make it forward.
So you knew that anointing, and you didn't run from that anointing. But Taco, you're a young guy. What do you say to the young people out in cyber world who may be listening to us this evening? What do you say to them who are struggling with that purpose and want to get out there and make that fast money? What does Andre Taco Reed say to that generation? How do they find that?
I'm happy you asked that question, Judge, because a lot of us, there was a lot of systematic racism that African Americans and people of color, I should say, face. And some of it falls on us because of, honestly, the things that we do. And we put ourselves in bad positions, and then we want to blame people or systems for it. And I could have been one of those ones that made bad decisions repeatedly and then blamed everybody else for it. But it really changed because I hung out with different people. One of my wife's friends mentioned she broke something down for me this weekend. And she said that you experience things or see things according to the class you're around. So if you want to experience greater things, you have to change the class or the setting that you're in. So I was determined to get my master's. So I had to hang around people that were doing things of that caliber. I couldn't do it hanging around in the neighborhood. I had to see things differently. I had to get out and experience some things. And some people here on the South Side, they've never even been out of Saginaw County or even out of, they haven't seen anything because they don't have the drive or the ambition to see greater because they're stuck in their now. So even if you have a bad situation, even at school is ways of doing this, having mentors. I seen a question about mentors. That experience with mentors aids with seeing a different view of things. Or going out of town, and I know everybody doesn't have the opportunity to do different things, but reading and going into youth groups, basketball teams, AAU, seeing things and being around people that are different from you, you get a chance to hear a different perspective. My daughter went to pretty much all predominantly white schools, And so she went to all white schools her whole life, but then I wanted her to see her people. So I started letting her play basketball with her friends on the the east, north, and south side of town, because I wanted her to experience the two different cultures. And once she experienced that culture, she didn't forget where she came from. She just knew how to balance it all out. She knew what one culture was experience was and what it was like in another culture, and she gravitated towards doing the right thing. So I mean, that's a tough question, but the thing is, I think just seeing different people and having different experiences really gets you to get beyond yourself and see things that's in your view. Because if you just go to an all Black school, high school, or if you just experience everything on the east, south, and north side, you don't know what the view is on the west side or vice versa. We have to get out and experience different youth groups, even going to the gym. The YMCA has so many different cultures, as you know, Judge, and you see judges, lawyers, doctors, coaches, teachers, healthcare workers. You experience all that, and from the camaraderie, you can experience different things and learn about finance. You can learn about how to eat better and do better. You can learn about how to be a better father. So those type of things helped me at a young age, because I was in the kudos. I was always at the Y in different programs. I was doing different things in the community. So just getting out and understanding your community helped change my view about a lot of things.
And Christine, if it's possible, could you put Taco and Undersheriff side by side, if that's possible? I don't know if that's possible. I want to bring him back in. We have a few more questions for him. But Taco, what do you say? I got to get back to that. How do you get out of the now? For young people, how do you get out of that now? Young people who are facing poverty, young people who are facing social economic disenfranchisement. I mean, with the climate, with police and our community, the African-American community, people of color community, the Hispanic American community. How do you get out of that now, Taco? I mean, they're all listening. They want to know, how do you get out of the now?
Actually, it's more to see, they don't even know a lot of them don't even realize they need help. And a lot of them don't even realize that they're stuck. And one thing that I do, one way that I help out is I reach out to them. I know their lingo, I kick it with them. And I know a lot of their parents, their family members, and I know how to, when I say chop it up with them and break it down and extend that helping hand to talk about money, to talk about their ambition. How do they see themselves in the next 5 or 10 years? What are their goals? Are they going to school? Do they need help with something? So a simple response for that, because it is sort of complex, is having mentors like myself and you and the women of color and other individuals like Power Dad and other mentorship programs. It's up to us to reach out to these people because a lot of times they don't even know that they have a need until it's too late. I'm trying to help. I helped some gentleman that had 2 felonies on his record. He has a master's degree now, but he can't necessarily get a good job because he's stuck in working for jobs. It's like $9 and $10 because he can't get his record expunged. But he didn't know that the laws changed here. And so I was explaining some things just with me being nosy and asking questions. I helped him, and I'm actually helping him to get beyond his past so he can establish a better future for himself. He made some mistakes as a youth, but I don't think he should be held accountable for the rest of his life for a non-violent offense that's preventing him from living his best life. So, the outreach, that's one of the ways that we can help the youth in social and economic position in negative situations like that, and kids that are have multiple children out of wedlock and they're just struggling to make it, working odd-end jobs. It's going to take mothers that have been in similar situations that are making it. I want to take fathers and gentlemen that used to be ex-gang members and drug dealers that reach out and be these mentors for you to help them see that I came from where you came from and I made it. So it's time for you to make it, and let's get it together.
Well, and I think what you and Mike both have indicated to us, I mean, despite the struggles, despite being passed over for promotions, despite physical problems, health challenges, you can still stand. Mike,
Yes.
and looking at what's happening with what's happening in our country today, you talked about listening as one of the things for police, and I'm going to deviate here. We only have a few more minutes, but what do you see as some major things that can be done for police reform to help to address some of the problems we're seeing in our country?
Well, actual police reform, the sheriff has a great idea that we've been talking about the last couple of days. And that is, and we're going to try and get this, we're going to really try to get this done and use our technology and be able to see things in real time. So the supervisor able to see what is going on with his people, even though he's not there. So he can see what's happening through the body cam. He can hear what's happening in real time so that he can make that phone call and say, the way you're handling this is not working. I'm on my way over there, or try something different, try this, try that. Things that would happen afterwards normally right now, right? But we're going to train them again, train them better. He uses a sports analogy and says, if the coaches go to practice and then the day of the game, the team goes to the stadium, but the coach goes to the bar. When the game is over, then they come back and tell the coach, well, we lost by 70 points. The coach is like, well, we're going to train and we're going to fix that. And then the next game, the coach goes to the bar and the team goes off by themselves. It's going to keep happening. If we can figure this out technology wise, where the supervisors can in real time see what's happening, then they can step in and say, hey, get off of him. He's handcuffed. You see what I'm saying? We got to start using our technology better, not just record, but use it to interact with the officers. Let them know you're starting to take this personal. Just wait for me. I'll be right there. Things like that, or tell the other officer, hey, intervene, step in right now, get him away. When I worked in the jail sergeant was there all the time. And one of those first couple of weeks, I had a confrontation with an inmate. I started taking my shirt off. And I'm like, I'm a man. I don't need this job. I will get another job. I was a man before this job. I'll be a man after this job. But you're not going to talk to me that way. I had a sergeant intervene, and she said, "Get out of here. Go out in the hallway and calm down. I don't need to calm down." She had another corrections officer come down and get me. Take him out in the hallway. That's what needs to happen. Things like that is what needs to happen. Because right now, all we're doing is seeing the video. We're only seeing the recording. There's nothing that can be fixed by watching the recording. Not then. If somebody would have told that knucklehead to get off that gentleman, we probably wouldn't be going through this right now the way we were.
Well, but we had that incident, but we had many more prior to that. So yeah. The issue is still there. Mike, but when you look at your department, the Saginaw County Sheriff's Department, how many people of color in 2020 on this Juneteenth, how many people of color deputies are out on the road now in Saginaw County? How many do we have?
We have Hispanic male, 2 African American males, a Native American male, and we have a young woman. What's that?
On the road.
On the road.
2 African Americans, 1 Native American, 1 Hispanic American.
Yep. On the road.
On the road.
Yep. Out of 20.
Saginaw County. On the road.
25.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And then we have, the command staff is myself and Lieutenant Rasco. So that's the most diverse command staff we've ever had. And then we have at least one jail sergeant that's African American.
Sergeant Ring.
So I think it's vastly improved from the 10 years prior from before. So Sheriff Fetterspiel has done what he said he would do, and he has, and hopefully we're going to be able to recruit and sponsor our own people through the police academy. That way, that will help us be able to get people that normally wouldn't have the opportunity.
Mike, what things do you try to do within your department to encourage officers if they see wrongdoing by other officers? Do they report that? If that blue wall of silence that that's been in the media lately, what's being done?
Well, our people know that they get in the same amount, if not trouble, as the person that committed whatever offense, right? And I have a talk with everybody that gets hired since I was a lieutenant. And when they first come to my shift, I would tell them, nobody's going to put food on your table. So if you were going to stand by and watch something happen and you lose your job, is that person going to pay your mortgage, feed your family, give you money every week out of his check? If that's not the case, then stand up and be the police, because that's our job. Our job is to do the right thing. And my guys understand that. And more than one has had to face the consequences. And I ask them, what did you do? You saw it going bad. Why didn't you step in? This person has 2 years on, you got 5 years on. That makes a difference? And it's worked for us. It's worked for us. And I know, because I've sat around and we question other agencies' decisions in-house, right? There's a lot of people that's taboo. You don't question you don't talk negatively about other agencies. Here, amongst each other, we'll talk about it. Did you hear what happened the other day? Yeah. Why? What would you do if that happened here? What would you do if you were there? Those types of things, when President Obama was elected, I stood in my living room and I wept, right? I was so proud of us, right? And then I went to work 2 days later and I saw the anger some people had. And I heard them tell people that election didn't mean anything. That changes nothing, right? And I looked at them and I said, we're here. It does change. And then I had to tell the people in the neighborhood there was problems. It's not going to change overnight. Please, have your celebration or have your thing at your place. It's okay to be happy, but we have to understand that some people are not going to be. And more than one time I've stepped in because I just don't like the way things happen. And once I can get my part leveled out, or I tell some, you know what, I'll just take care of this. You can go away. I'll take care of it. I was always just being Mike. And I'm trying to get my guys to understand thinking like that, thinking like the sheriff's office.
Well, Under Chef Gomez, Minister Reed, aka Taco, on behalf of the ladies and women of colors and everybody out in cyber world who's listening, you two guys have really given us a lot to think about. We want to say thank you for being a part. else who thinks about that, who would like to be on the next panel. Normally, Women of Colors, they do panels, one in the fall, one in the spring of the year, rotate between a male panel and a female panel. You can contact Women of Colors at 737-9286, 737-9286. And as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, the important things about a man is not the color of his skin or the texture of his hair, but the texture and quality of his soul. And we've heard from two individuals, Minister Reed and Under Sheriff Gomez, who really spoke to us from their souls. And I think that's their guiding force in their lives, their soul. Under Sheriff Gomez, the empathy that he projects and he tries to exemplify in his life. That spirit that Jeremiah had, that Minister Reed has, you know, that fire that's been, you know, in his bones since he was a little boy. I mean, I've been moved this afternoon, this evening now, and I know our time is coming to an end. I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Hill and President McGovern. It's in your hands, ladies.
Oh, it's me. Well, I just want to say thank you for stepping up and being transparent. I mean, it was very awesome. Minister Taco, through Christ, anything, all things are possible. And so your story is just, you know, words can't express. I know it's so much more to your story than what you even told, the unknown, the things that you've been through. And so we just thank God you're doing well in your family. And Under Sheriff, listen, that's so important. It's so important. I appreciate you answering our call to speak today. And this is our first virtual event, and I'm so glad it was you to help us kick it off. And I'm really encouraged. And on behalf of Women of Colors, I know all of us are encouraged. And I want to recognize our committee, our Women of Colors Community Committee. I don't know if we all can be on at the same time, but Vicky Hill, she's on the committee. And we have Ernestine and Alvin Reamer, they're on the committee as well, and Lynn Brummel Presley. And Judge Terry Clark does an awesome job as well. We want to thank you for being our host this evening. So I don't want to take up too much time, but we really appreciate you. We're very, very grateful.
Thank you so much. If you ever need me, feel free to give me a call.
Appreciate that.
I don't think I could have said it any better than what Evelyn has said. I appreciate the fact that Taco, that you were on our panel. Officer Gomez, I appreciate it. Your stories were really good. I enjoyed every moment of it. I thank you for standing in your truth and in total transparency of the struggles you went through in life and how you got through those. Women of Colors has been doing this for a few years now. And as Judge Clark said, we kind of flip back and forth with men and the women. So our next segment, we're looking at a date closer to July 31st for the women, which is How I Overcame. This is a panel of women, and at that time, we might be doing it the same way, via Zoom, via Facebook Live, telling about the struggles in their lives and how they got through them. Everybody has a story, but not everybody is willing to tell it. But think about this, when you tell your story, you are helping somebody else, whether you believe it or not, or even realize it or not. But there's power in words. And when you tell what you've gone through, that person might be going through the same thing or has gone through the same thing. You give them just a little bit more strength to make it through. So we appreciate the fact that you came on tonight to be a part of this panel. And as Evelyn has said, our president, this is our first virtual Facebook Live, and I think it went great. Judge Clark did an amazing job hosting this, as he normally does. He did a great job. And I thank everybody who has been watching and listening and asking all the questions. And yes, we had a whole lot more questions, but we don't want to keep you all night. We want you to come back for the next one, all right? So once again, thank you so very much.